Sorry about that. Very strange technical issues. I was hearing myself on feedback, so I had to stop that, and then the whole thing fell apart. Anyway, I'm with you now. So uh, I will give uh, people a few more seconds just to see if they want to join, want to come along. Essentially, what I'm here to do is give you a few thoughts on what happened tonight, and perhaps more importantly, what's going to happen now in the next few days, weeks, and months and years. That's really the focus. What happened tonight is that Recep Tayyip Erdogan won. It's as simple as that. There's no need for us to go into any great rhetorical flourish about it. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has won this election. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has lost this election. So what's next for Turkey? Well, there are three things that immediately occur to me that I think are worth just spelling out briefly. The first of those three is the question of women's rights. Erdogan won this election with a motley crew of allies. He allied himself to conservatives, religious conservatives, some of them extremely religious conservatives, and now he has to work with them. And some of these are politicians who are calling for a effort to roll back the rights of women. They want to, for instance, these are people essentially who believe that the place of a woman is in the household. They want to roll back laws which protect women against violence in the family. And they would like to see, for instance, laws that regulate maintenance payments for families that have broken up revoked, and instead bring in counsellors so that marriages can find ways of being brought back together again. This is a very definite conservative swing on the part of the AK Party, and there are members of both the AK Party and members within the AK Party's wider coalition who would like to see this happen. And now that the AK Party's electoral alliance has a majority in parliament and the AK Party's electoral alliance has the presidency, this could happen. So women's rights is definitely going to be something to watch out for in the months to come. Another one is Kanal Istanbul, this sort of bypass channel that they want to build to bypass the Bosphorus. It's a hugely controversial project opposed by the elected mayor of Istanbul, which for the moment is in opposition hands. But the land for Kanal Istanbul on the European side of Istanbul has already been sold, a lot of it to, it must be said, investors in the Gulf. And there is a feeling that there is this expectation that the project should start to go ahead. We may start to hear the president beginning to talk about the Kanal Istanbul project, which will have huge ramifications for the not just the culture of Istanbul and the kind of city Istanbul is, but it will have potential environmental implications in the way that the seas of the Marmara and the Black Sea will be merging into each other, wildlife implications. And I mean, they are talking about building a canal right across the western side of Istanbul province, which will change its geographical makeup. We may be hearing more about that in the time to come. But most important of all, really, or rather, not so much important, but most prominent of all, will be the economy. President Erdogan's victory speeches, there were two. He gave one in Istanbul on top of a bus, and he gave another one outside the presidential palace, which was significant in itself. And President Erdogan's victory speeches gave no indication that he's going to change his economic policy. So, intervening in the central bank, trying to push down interest rates as a way of battling inflation, which is economically unorthodox, shall we say. That is the policy that he's going to be sticking to. He said explicitly during his speech that both interest rates and inflation rates will continue to fall. There are no signs that that is likely to happen. The dollar reached another high against the Turkish lira just tonight. We'll see how the markets react tomorrow, although it has to be said, excuse me, it has to be said that the stock market certainly was reacting to an anticipated Erdogan victory on Friday, so we're unlikely to see any dramatic movements, I would venture, tomorrow. But having said that, the Turkish economy isn't going to make a change that many Western investors perhaps would be interested in. Erdogan is here and here to stay. We'll talk more about Erdogan's personal future in just a moment, but I do want to talk about Kılıçdaroğlu himself because it's been said often by James in Turkey and by others that this was a very effective opposition campaign, which may be a strange thing for me to say, you might think, given that the opposition has lost. But bringing together such a diverse range of Turkish political actors and parties was a remarkable achievement. And for Kurds and Turkish nationalists and some of the most religious parties in Turkey to come together under Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu's leadership for the sake of reinvigorating Turkey's democratic traditions was a monumental achievement, not really seen in Turkish political history, certainly not in the multi-party era of Turkish politics. And there are few people other than Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu who could have achieved that. But having said that, he achieved it, and yet he failed to win the presidency, and his alliance failed to win a majority, or anything near a majority, in parliament. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu is going to have to resign. He's been in office now for 13 years. There hasn't been a national election that he has won. He has been an able political operator in the sense that the mayoral elections in Istanbul or Ankara were won very much thanks to him in the sense that he picked the candidates who would win them, and he picked them both, really. Certainly Ekrem İmamoğlu of Istanbul, maybe a little less so Mansur Yavaş of Ankara. He picked them out of obscurity and propelled them onto the national stage, and that really is his legacy. But if that legacy is going to survive, it looks quite clear that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu will have to resign, and to preserve that, he'll have to hand over to perhaps the chosen successor, but he will have to leave one way or the other. It just seems quite clear, though, that infighting within the CHP is going to be fairly inevitable because the way that it's going is it's going to break out, descend into recriminations. Essentially, there will be some who believe that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu was the wrong candidate, that perhaps Ekrem İmamoğlu or Mansur Yavaş would have been a better chosen candidate. There will be others who will argue that Turkey's individual opposition parties should have all fielded their own candidates in the first round of the election and then come together for a potential second round. My assessment, I would venture that having a unity candidate in the first round was probably the right way to go, simply because there's only so much you can do in the 2 weeks between the first and the second round, and this election has proven that. There wasn't a huge amount that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu could have done between round one and round two to turn the tables in his favour. This election looked like he would have lost it pretty much from 2 weeks ago. But despite all those things, the time has come for Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu to go. I tweeted a little earlier this evening, surprised that he didn't resign during the press statements that he delivered. What time was it? At about 9:30 Turkish time. I was probably wrong in that. He spoke before the YSK, the Turkish Electoral Commission, actually announced the provisional election results. So there wasn't anything to go off apart from the data from the news agencies. That would have been too early for him to go. But it seems to me that after he speaks to the other allies within the Table of Six, within the Nation Alliance, and perhaps after he's had a decent night's sleep, we might hear from Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu tomorrow, where he announces at least a timetable for his departure, because the Turkish opposition has come together. They have given it their all. They have fought one of the most effective campaigns seen by a Turkish opposition party since easily 2002, when the AK Party was an opposition party, and they fought a very effective campaign. They won power this time. Today's Turkish opposition hasn't won power. There's clearly more work that they have to do, and leadership is the place where this starts. Final thing I wanted to say to you all is about Erdogan's future himself. Now, over the last few months, even years really, there's been a lot of speculation about Recep Tayyip Erdogan's health. I was translating him this evening, and he looked perfectly healthy to me. This is not a man who is about to shuffle off his mortal coil, but he isn't also a young man, and let's not forget this. So there's a certain amount of uncertainty, which is an inherent flaw in the executive presidency system when it comes to anchoring your leadership in one person. We are a heartbeat away from uncertain times in Turkey, given that we're investing so much in Recep Tayyip Erdogan himself. for the moment. So he looks okay, but uh, the Turkish legal arrangement at the moment is such that in 2028, 5 years from now, it is entirely possible that Recep Tayyip Erdogan can run for a fourth term. The law does allow it. There is a loophole that will allow him to run again. The Erdogan era can theoretically go on and on and on. But I would make this final point, which is that President Erdogan is more politically vulnerable today than he has ever been before. Because in the parliamentary election 2 weeks ago, his party scored its lowest result in any election since 2002. They have the lowest tally of seats individually themselves in parliament for many, many years. And they're entirely dependent on the allies within their coalition. And those allies are very on the very extreme fringes of Turkish politics. We've got religious extremists, we've got nationalist far right extremists, and he will have to cut deals with them in order not just to get any policies done, or at least to get his budget approved, but essentially to stay in power. So I say that notionally it is possible for Erdogan to run for re-election in 2028. But having said that, a lot will depend on his allies. We're going to start talking a lot more in, let's say, the months to come, not necessarily the days and weeks, but in the months to come, we're going to be talking a lot more, I will say, about the period after Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But one thing appears certain: the Turkish executive presidency system, the system that's been bemoaned by the opposition, the system that they wanted to abolish in this election, that system is here to stay, and it may very well outlast Erdogan himself. That's everything I really wanted to say. Thank you very much for tuning in to listen. I'm not going to bore you any much longer, and also it's coming up to midnight here. It's late wherever you are, I'm sure. I'm sure you will want to go and sleep as well. James in Turkey will continue. Thank you very much. Bye bye.